One morning, I walked out to my front yard with a cup of coffee and stared at my grass. It looked like a swamp. The ground was soaked, puddles everywhere, and my hose felt warm like it had just been used. I live alone in Oak Ridge Meadows. No kids, no roommates, no sneaky garden gnomes watering secret underground villages, just me, my coffee, and a lawn that seemed to water itself. At first, I thought my hose might be leaking, but I don't even have sprinklers, just one hose. That's when I noticed other weird things. My water bill had skyrocketed, like I was filling a pool every night. But my backyard only had a wilting pepper plant and a rusty grill. Where was the water going? I asked my neighbors, who were all nice enough, except for one, Susan Hayes. Her real name was Susan, and she'd moved in a few months ago, acting like the queen of Oak Ridge Meadows. She wasn't the HOA president, but you'd think she was, strutting around with a clipboard, judging everyone's lawns like she ruled the street. Susan had already complained about a neighbor's fence color, demanded someone trim their grass shorter, and even scolded the mailman for parking too close to her mailbox. She was a nightmare, but I didn't think she'd steal until I saw it. It was a Saturday. I'd just returned from the store when I pulled into my driveway and caught her in the act. There was Susan, in a loud floral shirt and a huge sun hat, dragging my hose across my yard like it was hers. She hooked it to a pressure washer and started cleaning her porch, no shame, no permission, just using my water in broad daylight like she paid for it. I sat in my car, stunned. She looked up, waved like we were pals, and shouted, "Hope you don't mind, just a quick rinse." I didn't get a chance to respond before she turned back to spraying. I gripped the steering wheel, torn between confronting her or ignoring it. I chose to stay calm, went inside, and stared at my faucet like it had betrayed me. Later, I knocked on her door politely and asked if her water line was broken. She laughed and said, "Oh no, I just like your hose better. The pressure's great. It's all community property, right?" Community property? I nearly choked. My house wasn't a shared farm, and the water wasn't free, it was on my bill. I told her firmly I didn't like her using my hose without asking. She smiled, tilted her head, and said, "I'm sure the HOA won't mind. We're supposed to share, be neighborly." Then she shut the door. Conversation over. I'm not a fighter. I don't yell or make a scene, I solve problems. So, I emailed the HOA with pictures, explained the situation, attached my water bill, and asked about this community property nonsense. Days later, I got a reply, "Thank you for your concern. We encourage neighbors to resolve minor disputes amicably without HOA intervention. In other words, deal with it yourself." I tried again. I bought a lock for the hose. Simple fix, Susan couldn't use what she couldn't access. Problem solved, right? Wrong. The next morning, the lock was gone. Not unlocked, but cut clean through with bolt cutters. I stared at the sliced metal like it was a crime scene, half expecting to find fingerprints. I knew who did it. Across the street, Susan was at it again, using my hose to wash her SUV, water spraying everywhere like it was free. I confronted her, less polite this time. I asked about the lock. She said, "Oh, that thing? It was a safety hazard. Someone could trip. I took care of it." Then she smiled, flipped her hair, and kept scrubbing her tires. I was speechless. I went inside, sat down, and stared at the wall for 10 minutes. The HOA wouldn't help, Susan was untouchable, and I was funding her house and car spa treatments. That's when I got an idea. I installed a small, motion-activated security camera under the gutter near the spigot. If I couldn't stop her, I'd document her. Maybe the HOA would care, or maybe the internet would handle her. People online love a thief caught in 4K. 2 days later, I had the footage, crystal-clear shots of Susan sneaking into my yard, like a cartoon villain, dragging the hose with her smug grin. She used it to water her plants, fill a kiddie pool, and wash her dog, all before I woke up. It was a full Susan show, and I had every second recorded. I posted a clip to a local Oak Ridge Meadows forum titled, Neighbor steals my water every morning. The video blew up. People were furious, some laughed, others gave advice. One guy sent a link to a motion-triggered sprinkler that sprays intruders. Best of all, Susan saw it. I knew because the next morning she pounded on my door. No hat, no smile, just anger. She claimed I was violating her privacy, ruining her reputation, and creating a hostile environment. I said she was violating my property, stealing my water, and creating a financial burden. She huffed and said the dumbest thing ever. Do something about it. I dare you. That dare lit a fire in me. I was done being the nice neighbor, done with HOA emails, done with locks. Susan wanted a challenge, and I'd give her one she'd never forget. If she wanted water, she'd get it my way. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. No more playing nice. I wanted to see how bold she really was. Did she only steal when I wasn't home, or was she fearless? I took a day off work, stayed inside, blinds drawn, coffee in hand, and watched. Sure enough, at 10:30 a.m., I heard the spigot hiss and the hose drag across my yard. I peeked through the blinds. There was Susan in yoga pants, spraying her driveway like it was her personal car wash. She saw me step outside, phone in hand, hesitated for a split second, then kept going like I wasn't there. I didn't speak, just recorded. She didn't care. She waved the hose and said, "See? Works great. You should thank me for keeping it in shape." I forced a smile, went inside, and watched the video again. The footage was perfect, but I knew the HOA wouldn't act. It was time for real justice. That afternoon, I uploaded the new footage to Oak Ridge Meadows Facebook group, titled "Local Susan Turns Neighbor's Hose into Personal Water Park." Within hours, comments flooded in. Everyone had a Susan story. People laughed, mocked her, suggested silly punishments, and a few offered legal tips. Some were mad the HOA did nothing. The video spread beyond the group to Reddit and YouTube. Strangers tagged their friends, and Susan noticed. The next morning, she stood in her yard with 2 HOA board members, pointing at my house. I watched from my window as she played the victim, gesturing wildly, even fake wiping a tear. Hours later, I got a letter in my mailbox, a formal HOA warning for unauthorized surveillance and hostile behavior. I nearly laughed. They were angrier about my camera than her theft. That was it. I was done with their rules. If the system wouldn't help, I'd make my own. I brainstormed, alarms, fake signs, pranks, but nothing felt right. I wanted something poetic, unforgettable. Then fate stepped in. Driving past a construction site near Oak Ridge Meadows, I saw workers setting up a temporary sewage tank, the kind used for portable toilets. An idea hit, awful, brilliant, perfect. I chatted with a worker, said I was a homeowner with drainage issues, and asked about the tank for an irrigation experiment. After some small talk and a little cash, he agreed to let me access it for one evening, no questions asked, as long as I didn't touch the pump. At home, I grabbed my toolbox and built a small adapter to connect the spigot to a second hose, which I ran underground to the sewage tank, hidden behind bushes. The main hose looked normal, but when turned on, it would pull from the tank, not clean water. I tested it with a sealed bucket. The smell could have knocked out a bear. Everything was set. I rigged it one night, cameras rolling, and left the main hose where Susan always grabbed it. The trap was ready. The next morning, at 10:30, I heard the spigot. I pulled up the camera feed. Susan dragged the hose, confident as ever, and hooked it to a fancy rotating sprinkler in her yard. She turned it on. At first, a gurgle, then a sputter. She looked confused. Then it hit, a jet of thick, smelly sewage sprayed her lawn, patio, and white lawn chairs. The sprinkler spun, soaking everything. Susan screamed so loud I heard it through my walls. She slipped on the wet grass, ran to the spigot, and yanked the hose, but not before another spray hit her legs. Neighbors peeked out. Some gasped, one dropped his coffee, another started filming. Susan wrestled the hose like it was alive, coughing and screaming. I watched on my screen, savoring the moment. This wasn't just revenge, it was art. Later, I acted clueless, checking my mail. Susan stormed over, covered in sludge, yelling about lawsuits and biohazards. I smiled and said, "You told me to do something about it." So I did. She stomped off, shouting about the HOA. That night, I uploaded the footage, anonymously, through a neighbor's account. Within hours, it broke the internet. Susan became infamous, not in a good way. By morning, Oak Ridge Meadows had changed. People laughed openly, no longer whispering. The video hit Reddit, TikTok, and Facebook with titles like "When Susans Get What They Deserve." Someone added dramatic music and slow-motion zooms of Susan's reaction. Another neighbor filmed from their balcony, catching it live. The sewage stunt was phase 1, and it worked perfectly. But Susan wasn't the type to learn. I knew she'd fight back, so I planned phase 2, something permanent. I added 2 more cameras around my house, and one above the hose, hidden in a fake birdhouse, for a full view. I upgraded the hose rig with a remote switch in my garage, letting me toggle between clean water and the sewage tank. It was hidden underground, covered with grass, foolproof. Then Susan went quiet. For 2 days, her curtains stayed closed, her car didn't move, her yard untouched. It felt like the calm before a storm. On day 3, an HOA fine arrived, $600 for violating community health protocols and creating a hazard. Susan claimed I'd threatened her with a chemical attack, backed by fake witnesses. I called the HOA, offered my footage, timestamps, and construction site proof that the hose was on my property. They said they'd review it at the next meeting a month away. It was a setup. Susan knew the HOA was slow and easy to manipulate. But she underestimated me. I dug into public records, HOA bylaws, and county files. In the bylaws, I found gold. Section 4.2b, trespassing to use utilities without permission could lead to fines and HOA penalties. Susan had walked onto my property countless times, all on video. I compiled everything: footage, water bills, neighbor complaints, bylaws, into a packet and sent copies to the HOA and residents who'd clashed with Susan. I didn't start a fight, I started a revolt. Within days, a neighbor, Tom Carter, knocked on my door. He'd had enough of Susan since she fined his too bright porch light. He thanked me for exposing her. More neighbors joined, sharing stories. Susan had enemies everywhere, and I'd lit the spark. The street buzzed, people swapping footage like trading cards. I didn't need to do more. Susan's kingdom was crumbling. The final blow came when someone leaked a recording of an HOA meeting where Susan tried to sway the board, screaming about jealous neighbors. Paired with the sewage video, it was a perfect storm. 2 days later, Susan emerged, sunglasses on, no makeup, shaken. She didn't yell or steal. She got in her car and drove off, avoiding everyone. For the first time, Oak Ridge Meadows felt peaceful. But I stayed ready. Susan wasn't gone for good. 3 days later, she and 2 HOA board members showed up at my door, accusing me of escalating a property dispute and biohazards. Susan demanded I pay for her lawn cleanup, apologize, and attend an HOA conflict resolution. I showed them my evidence: videos, bills, bylaws. The board members read it, and Susan's face paled. They said they'd hold a special meeting in a week. Susan demanded instant action, but they ignored her. As they left, Susan hissed, "I'll make sure everyone knows who you are." I replied, "They already do." That night, I posted a factual summary on the Oak Ridge Meadows forum, detailing her trespassing, my HOA attempts, and how I protected my property. The response was huge. Neighbors offered to mow my lawn. One left a pie with a note: "You're a legend." At the special HOA meeting, my evidence crushed Susan's lies. The board fined her $500 for trespassing and warned she'd lose HOA privileges if it happened again. Her ally on the board resigned. Susan, once the street's boss, now walked her dog with her head down, avoiding eyes. Her driveway stayed dry, her porch dirty, and she never touched my hose again. She tried one last move, a city complaint claiming I'd illegally installed a sewage connection. An inspector checked, laughed for 5 minutes, and cleared me. The setup wasn't permanent. No violation. He joked, only if it's not from that hose. My video hit 4 million views. People wanted interviews. Someone offered to sell hose justice shirts. Neighbors treated me like a hero, but I just felt relieved. A month later, a moving truck parked at Susan's house. No goodbye, she packed and left. Her house sold to a young couple with a toddler who brought cookies and asked to use their own hose. I nearly cried at the normalcy. Later, I got an email from Mark Evans in another HOA. Susan was his new neighbor, already complaining about wind chimes and stealing a hose. He'd seen my video and asked for tips. I sent my valve plans, camera brands, and a Susan defense protocol. Days later, he emailed back. Susan got sprayed with compost tea and fertilizer in front of kids on scooters. The video went viral. Susan's Revenge, Part 2. I started a blog about HOA drama, sharing anonymous stories. It grew fast. People were tired of bullies. I sold shirts with hose before foes. But my favorite moment wasn't the fame or Susan's fall. It was hearing laughter from the new couple's toddler, playing in their own sprinkler, no theft, no fines. That was the win: peace, respect, and a neighborhood free of Susan's chaos. One evening, I found a note under my door in Susan's cursive. "You won this time, but I'll be back." I laughed, tossed it, and kept my cameras on, valve ready. Susan was gone, flushed out by truth. I watered my pepper plant, hose in hand, and felt at home again.